What's up, folks? Sean the Average Angler back from a week at Clearlake. What a week it was. We had the tournament, 4 days of practice prior to that. And yeah, so let's go over that. We're going to do a little bit of a fishing report at the end. If that's all you want, you can skip to the end. Otherwise, this is about my week at Clearlake. First of all, it was a blast. Good to hang out with the fellas. Spend some time relaxing away from work. The weather was kind of a little fluctuating, if you will, okay? Beginning of the week, we had some winds, we had some cool days, a little bit of rain, not much. Yeah, and a bite that was ever-changing daily, seemed like. I started out with this 9-pounder that I'll post right here so you can see it. That was my first fish of the trip. And that was caught on a Carolina rig bellows gill on a point on that really nice IROD 754 air. Man, what a beautiful specimen that fish was. So fat, so full of eggs and shad. Quite honestly, the lake is very, very fertile and full of shad. And we'll get into that more as we go. All right, so day one was a grind. Quite honestly, every day for me was a grind. I figured some things out, but nothing that made me believe I had a chance to win. It was going to be more of a grind. Try and make that top 20 because I thought I had the ability to get the weight to make the top 20. The bites that I really wanted to see never developed for me. Doesn't mean they weren't going on in other places, but they weren't going on where I was fishing and the various places I did fish. So what did work was a drop shot, a 4-inch Senko, the Frenzy nail with a Fatty Z. The Fatty Z rig that I released on Thursday was good in the beginning. And then we ended with a 3.3 Kitech on a little 1/8 ounce ball head. We went anywhere from water temperatures of 52 to say 62. And the last day, the water really warmed up. We started getting some stable weather through the tournament, and the water did start to warm up a bit every day. You would think that would send the fish running to the bank. That's not really what happened. There was fish spawning. Definitely there was fish spawning. Not everywhere, and not necessarily a lot of them. The fish really seemed to be keyed on bait. And bait, they have. I mean, there is, 5-inch shad all over the place. And if you found the 5-inch shad, you would find the bigger fish feeding on it. Usually that's kind of the story with the hitch. Only the last day I caught 3 hitch where I was fishing. They were hitting that little ball head swim Kitech. I mean, they were hitting it, not with their mouth, with their body. Every one of them was snagged in like the middle portion of their body. And they were milking. When you held them to get the hook out, you wanted to make sure you pointed it away because those things shoot a stream, let me tell you. Anyway, beautiful fish. They were just the right size. Made me want to throw my Hog Hunter hitch pattern swim bait. And I did. They wouldn't touch it. The only thing that were hitting it was the hitch. Anyway, so we went back to the smaller 3.3 Kitech, and we'll get into that in a minute. But one of the most consistent bites I had that lasted a few days was the drop shot. And pretty much actually the whole time I was there, with the exception of the final day. The drop shot caught fish. Now, I threw it in tules, I threw it around docks, I threw it in the willow trees. And that really was the bite that I thought was going to produce for me throughout the tournament. Problem was, Day one of the tournament, my boat broke down. I couldn't get to the areas that I had practiced in and wanted to fish. So you make lemonade out of lemons, folks. I fished on the trolling motor for the tournament, and yeah, went out and had fun. Got paired with my co-anglers. We went out and tried to do the best we could, and it was pretty much mediocre all 3 days. The first two weighing 4 fish a day. I didn't practice in the area I had to fish. Had no idea the boat was going to break down. I don't think it's a big problem. It's just some sort of starting issue. You push the button and it just clicks, kind of like a car solenoid. So anyway, I'll have to look into that, but I fished on the trolling motor and had a lot of fun, kept my head in the game. It's Clearlake. You can catch a 30-pound bag just about anywhere on the lake. And if you know Lakeport and the 5th Street ramp, Library Park, where the tournament went out of, there's good water around there. It's just not my type of water typically. But I learned a lot, and I need to learn more. We'll get to that in a minute. So I just put my head down and dug in, and there was willow bushes around, and there was docks around, and tulies around. So I went to work with that drop shot, threw swim baits, glide baits, flags. Man, I threw the gamut. I had a lot of rods in the boat. I think I took 25 rods with me, and wouldn't you know, the 2 I would have loved to have had, didn't take them. I didn't think that I would need light finesse rods. Anyway, that first day, it took us a while to figure out a way to catch these fish, and what ended up happening is at the end of the day, they started to float, meaning they're sitting high in the water column. And those fish become very hard to catch, especially if they see you. My co-angler actually figured that bite out. He threw a Pro Senko and got the first bite. That's a skinnier Senko, so lighter. And so I tied on a 4-inch Senko and commenced to catching several fish and throwing it in the trees, folks, on light line. You got to get bit before you can worry about getting the fish to the boat, is the old saying. And that's the motto we had to live by. And that's what I was living by even with the drop shot, because I was throwing that drop shot in the middle of willow trees and willow bushes as well. And really, I didn't lose a fish until the final day. And that wasn't even on that pattern. We ended up getting on something else as time went on. Day 2, my co-angler had a boat, so we did get to move around and do some different things. And day 2, I believe the drop shot and swim bait produced some fish. 5.8 Kitech on a flashy swimmer, and either a MM3 or the pink worm, Morning Dawn, in 6-inch RoboFat and 7-inch. All those were working. Again, I didn't catch a ton of fish. I really didn't find any areas that were loaded, and that's because I was looking for the wrong thing. Clearlake has changed. Clearlake has changed ever since the shad die-off years ago. So we had the shad die-off and then the low water years, and the fish's food source, at least this is my opinion, had changed what they were keying on. And there was still plenty of shad in the lake, but they were tiny. And for these bigger fish, those tiny shad just aren't much of a meal, and perhaps not worth the effort to try and get enough to eat that way. Everything's recovered. Last year they were really on the hitch. The year before they were really on the hitch. But now the shad, like I said, there's 5-inch shad. We caught them. They were so thick, you catch them on your baits. There's probably bigger shad out there that I didn't happen to see. But these bigger fish like to key on the bait. And right now they are keyed on the bait. I was around a bunch of guys who were scoping. It was in an area where the shad was trapped inside an area, moving around. The hits were coming in thick as could be, but the bass were keyed on the shad. So I'm not a big scoper. I haven't spent the time to do it. That's going to change. I'm going to have to do it if I want to fish tournaments. I like fishing tournaments, so I will need to figure out scoping. At least to where if I'm in the situation I was in this week, I feel comfortable to do it. The fish were there for me to have 10 pounds more a day if I knew how to catch them, which is basically looking around and seeing them. What you needed to find was balls of bait that were being fed on. And you can tell when they're being fed because you'll see the fish rush into them, you'll see the ball disperse. And all you had to do was throw the minnow into that, swim it through, and when it got outside of it, pow, they'd freaking crush it. And that's where the bigger fish were at, to be honest. I mean, I'm sure there's some spawning here, there, whatever. The 9-pounder I caught was out on a point in deeper water. But I need to learn scoping. This old man's going to have to learn something new. So, anyway, since I wasn't proficient in scoping, I thought, well, let's try a Kitech. A 3.3 on a little ball head is probably one of the fish catchingest baits anywhere. Even though it was smaller than the bait they were feeding on, I think because it was different, they ate it. So once we had figured that out, you just sit and work an area. And the place was loaded. I mean, the bass were moving in, they were moving out, and that little ball head caught them. I think the third fish I caught, didn't catch, I hooked, was a big one. And it just, I must have had a nick in my line that I didn't feel when I checked it, and hit, turned its head, gave a kick, and it popped. And it's really too bad because the co-angler I had on the final day, he was up there, and we were really shooting for 20 pounds to at least try and maintain them. As we saw the weights afterwards, those top guys, they crushed them on day 3. Paul Bailey had almost 40 pounds. John Pearl had 35 something. Nathan, the guy in second, had 30 some odd pounds. I mean, both him and John Pearl went over 100 pounds. Clearlake is healthy and alive. As we've all known, we see all the stuff all year. What I do want to tell you guys is they're not easy to catch. Okay, it's actually, if you're not scoping, it's probably one of the harder places to go and catch any kind of numbers. You can spend a day fishing and catch some fish. My experience was you weren't going to catch a ton of them. Okay, and part of that's because there was 200 boats on the lake for a week, and those fish start to get wise after they get a few hooks in their grill, and they just climb up a bit. Look, they're used to it. The lake gets a lot of pressure. They know, hey, it's tournament week. We got to chill out and not eat those things anymore. And yeah, it just got tougher every day, especially the tournament days. I think the first day, there were some bites around for everybody. Day 2 was a little bit lighter weights, pretty much down the board, with an exception of Chris Raza, who brought in a 36-pound bag, I think. And then day 3, it picked back up for all those guys in the top. Other guys struggled even more. If you look down the results, you'll see a lot of blanks. You'll see a lot of 1 fish, a lot of 2 fish bags. So all in all, I'm pretty proud of the results I got, considering I fished on a trolling motor only and essentially fished within a mile of the ramp all 3 days. It was pretty good learning experience, and I learned some new things about the bait, how the fish are reacting to it. Don't think that the fish are all going to go running to the bank to spawn just because it's a full moon and it's April, because it did not look to me like that's what was going to happen. There was a lot of those fish that were keyed on that bait. They'll probably go in the next week or 2. But I didn't feel like they were ready to go running to the bank now. And we went and looked for some beds and areas. There wasn't even males up there. You know, it's coming. I think the point is, bass fishing's so great because every time we think we know something, we find out we don't. And that's pretty much my experience this week. A lot of the myths have been busted, at least in my mind, and I need to broaden my perspective and learn some more techniques, because if not, in tournaments, I'm just going to get my butt kicked. And I don't like getting my butt kicked. I want to perform, you know. Anyway, thanks for watching. We're going to have some good content coming this week. I got some new bait stuff to go over. We'll go over some of the rigs that I use. The main rod that I fished was the iRod Air 722 spinning rod. And let me tell you, folks, that thing is phenomenal. Great sensitivity. It casts light baits really well. It's got power to get fish turned and back to the boat. Extremely impressed. All right, I'm Sean the Average Angler. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.